where are the young people coming through? I actually was really quite taken with A.B. Klobuchar, but I was sad to see her pull out of the race.
5-5, the panel. There's been an ongoing copyright battle over the guitar riff in Led Zepp's Stairway to Heaven classic, but the latest round has been won by the band. The estate of Randy Wolf, who performed as Randy California, had claimed copyright infringement, saying that Jimmy Page had plagiarised his band Spirit's song called Taurus. However, in the latest round of legal battles, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has found that the riffs aren't similar enough to be a copyright tune. So let's not judge ourselves. You can be the judge. Here's Randy's one. Okay, so that's Taurus by Spirit, and this is Stairway to Heaven. Oh my goodness. Mauricio.
Sounds the same to me.
Sounds the same.
I'm afraid to say, but yeah. It's difficult though, isn't it? There's a musician inspired by another musician, and that gives them the spark, but that might be a little bit too similar.
That's very similar. It's not a homage, is it? Heather Roy, what do you think?
Oh, they do sound quite alike, but look, who am I to judge? And I just keep coming back to who's won this battle? The lawyers.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It's, the creativity is a funny thing, isn't it, Mauricio? Because they were on tour together. In fact, here's a thing here. Spirit and Zeppelin. I must be the only Spirit fan in New Zealand. Just to correct the situation, Led Zepp with a support band for Spirit, and in '69, in one of their shows, Zeppelin played an extended medley of songs, including Spirit songs. So this Spirit saying is saying, hey, you ripped it off.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's going to happen more and more as more and more music comes out. There's going to be some clashes and some similarities. I remember the Lana Del Rey a couple of years ago, because I'm a big Radiohead fan. She did a rip-off of Creep. What was her song? Get Free, I think it was. And she got done for millions in the end. Yeah, Radiohead took it to court and she lost. It happens. I mean, it is inspiration, or are you just taking the piss?
Or copying, yeah.
And I suppose in the political sphere, Heather, when you saw people rip off your policies?
Well, the National Party and music, let's not go there.
Very true.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. A lot of helmet feedback. Carol says, my father said to me they haven't learned to transplant heads yet when he bought me a helmet to go with my 150cc Vespa motor scooter. This was in the early 60s, long before helmets became compulsory. I've always worn one as I've cycled too. I feel naked without it. So there we have it. And just one more here. Totally disagree with Lance. Who picks up the tab when people get head injuries by making their own personal choice whether to wear a helmet or not? Mauricio Almeida Perez and Heather Roy, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Wallace.
It's been fantastic. I'm Wallace Chapman, back with you tomorrow from 3:45. Checkpoint next.
Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere nei, Australia closes its borders to all visitors from Italy. Should New Zealand do the same? We'll have the latest, including a shot across the bow from the New Zealand Cruise Association after the government warns people to think twice about coming aboard. Vodafone prepares to practice its pandemic plan, sending 1,200 Auckland workers home to see if it can cope remote. COVID-19's killed Coachella, for now at least, so has travel insurance got you covered or not? And keep calm and keep the reusable cup. COVID-19 shouldn't stop you saving the planet. Hawke's Bay farmers call for a drought declaration in their area. And don't forget, you can watch us live on Facebook.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora ko Susana Leata with DNA. The Serious Fraud Office has opened separate investigations into donations made in relation to election campaigns of the Christchurch and Auckland mayors, Leanne Dalzell and Phil Goff. The police last month referred both cases to the SFO. Questions had been raised about donations of more than $1,500 to Ms Dalzell's campaign last year. And last September, a formal complaint was laid over Mr Goff's 2016 election expenses declaration of cash donations from fundraising auctions. However, it's not confirmed whether this is related to the SFO's investigation. The National Party is urging the government to follow Australia and ban foreign travellers arriving from Italy and South Korea, which have the largest COVID-19 outbreaks outside China. New Zealand's borders are currently only closed to foreigners coming from China and Iran. Nationals leader Simon Bridges says the government should be enforcing the same restrictions as Australia, which today announced a ban on arrivals from Italy.
We believe in National that there is still the prospect to contain this virus in New Zealand, or if not, certainly to slow it down dramatically. And we look at what, for example, as Australia is doing, where they have made these calls in their national interest, and we think it's the right thing to do here as well.
Simon Bridges. The New Zealand share market has ended down. A strong start to the day evaporated when Washington's expected economic stimulus plan to counter the coronavirus failed to materialise. The top 50 index was up by 2.7% this morning, reversing the near 3% drop of the day before. But it fell steadily through the afternoon to close 0.2% or 24 points down. Federated farmers say conditions in some parts of Hawke's Bay are the driest they've been in 50 years and government support is urgently needed. Its Hawke's Bay President Jim Galloway says some farms are running dangerously short of water and a state of drought needs to be declared.
On quite a few farms, their water supply is getting low or non-existent, such as creeks are drying up, wells are dropping and dams have dried out. So that's the biggest issue that farmers would be facing.
Drought declarations have already been made in several North Island regions. The Agriculture Minister says an announcement about Hawke's Bay is coming, but not today. The Gore District Council has been charged in connection with the death of a 3-year-old who drowned in a wastewater treatment pond in January last year. Lachlan Jones could not be revived after being found unresponsive in an oxidation pond in South Gore. The council has been charged by WorkSafe and with failing in its duty under the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015. Joe Biden has extended his lead in the contest to become the US Democratic Party's presidential candidate. In the latest primaries, the former American vice president is on course to beat Bernie Sanders in Mississippi and Missouri, having already taken the biggest prize, Michigan. He told supporters President Donald Trump's policies have isolated the country and dishonoured the founding documents of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
I believe we're in the battle for the soul of this nation. With Donald Trump as president, our core values, our standing in the world, our very democracy, everything that has made America America is truly at stake.
Joe Biden addressing supporters today. DOC is appealing for information about the apparent shooting of a red-billed gull with a crossbow near Kaikoura. Photos released by the department show the protected bird with a crossbow through its chest. South Marlborough Operations Manager Phil Bradfield says the red-billed gull population is already declining and the attack is unacceptable. He says the bird has been seen behaving normally despite its injury. It's 4 minutes past 5. Hurricanes co-captain Dane Coles will make his first start of the Super Rugby season after being named to play against the Chiefs in Hamilton on Friday night. The All Blacks hooker missed the side's first 2 games in South Africa and Argentina and has come off the bench in 2 of their 3 matches since then. His naming means his co-captaincy with TJ Perenara formally comes into effect tonight. Meanwhile, All Blacks utility Damian McKenzie will return from a rest week for the Chiefs. McKenzie, who missed their 51-14 thumping of the Waratahs, has been named to start at fullback in one of just 2 changes to the starting 15. And the forwards, Mitchell Brown comes in to start at lock for Canadian international Tyler Ardron, who has been ruled out with an infection. The White Ferns captain Sophie Devine says the advantage of hosting next year's One-Day World Cup comes down to more than knowing how the pitches play. The announcement of the draw in Wellington today confirmed New Zealand will play at least, or will play at all 6 venues being used for the tournament. Devine says there are many upsides to having a World Cup in your own backyard.
For us, it's not just the conditions out there, it's the environment. I think being able to, stay in your own bed, certainly here in Wellington for me, but also just being familiar with the surroundings as well, knowing the facilities, knowing the people, it just brings a level of comfort and confidence. I think that is certainly going to help us next year.
Sophie Devine. That's the news.
Volatile markets test investors' nerves.
As long as you've got your risk profile where you wanted it, don't look at your KiwiSaver balance.
Living under coronavirus lockdown in Italy.
Well, we are facing what I call it a kind of wartime. Nobody could imagine this kind of crisis.
And Donald Trump says it'll be all right.
So that they don't get penalised for something that's not their fault, it's not our country's fault.
A little bit of everything. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on air and online.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, a few showers in the west, spreading everywhere tomorrow. Auckland to Taranaki, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Central High Country. Scattered showers, possibly heavy with thunderstorms in Bay of Plenty and Central High Country today. Clearing from the south tonight. Fine tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, mostly cloudy with a few showers. Whanganui to Kapiti Coast, fine apart from isolated inland showers. Wellington and Wairarapa, isolated showers retreating to coastal Wairarapa and becoming fine elsewhere. Cloudy tomorrow. Nelson and Buller, a few showers, some heavy, possibly thundery inland, clearing tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland, mainly fine. Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy periods, a few showers, clearing. Fine apart from cloudy or cloud in the morning and night tomorrow. In Chatham Island, showers clearing tomorrow, but remaining cloudy. RNZ National, it's coming up to 7 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. The government warns New Zealanders to reconsider cruising, and the latest from the Prime Minister's COVID-19 cabinet meeting underway right now. She's expected to hold a press conference at 5:30. We'll bring you the details. Plus, Vodafone trials employees working from home and why the future of Keep Cups is up in the air. But we begin tonight in Australia, where the government has moved to ban visitors from Italy as the country marks yet another spike in deaths from the COVID-19 virus. This afternoon, Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced his country's ban will extend from China, Iran and South Korea to those from Italy.
That ban will come into effect at 6 p.m. this evening. That's what Border Forces advised me. And effectively, though, I think it's important not to overstate this. I mean, Italy itself has effectively put itself into lockdown with travel now, and this largely closes that loop.
Australian residents returning from Italy will have to be quarantined for 2 weeks following screening at the Australian border. He also announced over $2 billion in funding for primary and aged care and hospitals. The country's health minister, Greg Hunt, said Australia is also investing in finding a cure.
We will invest $30 million in research into vaccines, antivirals and immunotherapy or respiratory treatments. That's a very important step, and we'll be working with the research community on that.
That's Greg Hunt, Australia's health minister. Meanwhile, in Italy, residents are adjusting to major restrictions on their movement as the country adopts virtual shutdown measures. The number of coronavirus-related deaths has surged again to the highest one-day toll in Italy so far. 168 people died in the last 24 hours, taking the death toll to 631. Schools are closed, travel is restricted, and large gatherings of people, including funerals and weddings, have been cancelled. The restrictions are tight, but the government says necessary as it tries to contain the spread of the virus. The BBC's Mark Lowen reports.
All residents stay at home, orders the police. From Naples in the south to the supermarkets of Rome to the financial capital up in Milan, news of the restrictions spread as fast as the virus. In Bologna today, they began to adjust to the toughest limitations since the war. Public gatherings banned, bars and restaurants closed from 6 p.m, tables a metre apart, schools, museums and nightclubs shut. Everyone is affected, Italians, tourists and expats living here, staying put as several airlines stop flights.
Well, obviously we won't be able to travel in the immediate future. We've been told that we can only take trains between the cities in Italy for reasons of work or health or for some extraordinary emergency. And apart from that, we must stay put. But that seems sensible.
And another thing is they've put this limelight or spotlight on age groups, and makes me feel really, really old. But I'm optimistic about it.
Moving around requires a form, which we also had to complete, allowing travel for work or health emergencies or to return home. We'd have to produce it if asked. It says here that falsifying this document could lead to prosecution. Never could people in Italy have conceived of the idea that they'd need this to be able to move within their own country. As we drove out, traffic seemed quieter. Roads are open, though Slovenia says it will close its border, and Austria has banned Italians entering unless with medical certificates. Well, we've come out of Bologna now and we're on the motorway to Rome, and we haven't seen any police checks for the documents, so still not clear how these restrictions are going to be enforced. We pulled over and got through to a doctor in one of the worst virus-hit areas. Hospitals are near breaking point.
We need more beds, more doctors, more nurses, because I think that in 1 to 2 weeks we will reach the top. So if we will not have more facilities, we will not know how to take care of the patients. We are facing a war now here.
In Rome, deserted tourist sites show the huge economic impact. The government now discussing suspending tax and bill payments to ease pressure. From inside the Vatican, the Pope led Mass, urging priests to have the courage to visit the sick, a risky call. And often, it's too late. Even funerals are now banned, replaced with a restricted blessing. The virus is killing and taking Italy's dignity with it.
Mark Lowen with that report. Back at home in a fiery exchange at Parliament, the Prime Minister has accused the opposition of politicking and scaremongering in response to the COVID-19 crisis. But as our Deputy Political Editor Craig McCulloch reports, the government also engaged in some politicking of its own.
This is a global issue, not the time for scaremongering and politicking like that member continues to do.
Fighting words from Jacinda Ardern, her strongest denunciation of the opposition since the COVID-19 outbreak. National has been relentless in its pressure on the government, attacking on all fronts: health, business, the overall plan. Today, it slammed the country's border controls as third-rate, demanding it match Australia's travel ban on Italy, just hours after Australia announced its move.
You know, the reality is right now we're seeing a situation where it's not even screening necessarily. That's certainly what I'm hearing on the ground.
New Zealand currently requires anyone coming from northern Italy to quarantine themselves for 2 weeks, but has not closed its borders to the country. Ministers are seeking advice on whether they should follow Australia's lead. Simon Bridges says New Zealand is lagging behind, and not just on travel restrictions.
When will New Zealanders see a specific COVID-19 plan as Australians have, as British have, and other countries as well?
Mr. Speaker, it's already in operation, and to suggest otherwise is irresponsible.
The government is following its influenza pandemic plan, which Ms Ardern says is entirely applicable for COVID-19.
If the member is criticising it, he may wish to reflect it was produced in mid-2017 under his government. Finally,
National is also calling for the government to delay its planned minimum wage hike next month, saying now is the worst time to pile costs on struggling businesses.
Does she understand that to keep New Zealanders in jobs, we need businesses in business?
I think it is utterly unreasonable and politicking of that member instead of supporting initiatives that will support business, instead calling for low-wage workers to earn less.
And then the government fired back a shot of its own, referencing a TV interview Mr Bridges gave earlier that day.
To the Minister, does he stand by his statement rejecting the idea that this government will increase GST? If so, why?
Mr Speaker, I can absolutely say that, and I was quite surprised earlier today to see the Leader of Opposition fail to rule that out, but I guess anything's possible with Simon Bridges.
It prompted calls from the opposite bench. who's politicking now? A fair question, given Mr Bridges had repeatedly said in his interview that a GST increase was not on the table, was not in his plan. The opposition finds itself in a difficult spot. Its very role is to hold the government to account. And being election year, it will want to drive home the coalition's failings. But stray too far, and it risks undermining confidence in the official response and potentially making a public health emergency worse. Atu iti whare parimata mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Craig McCulloch.
If you've got a slight sniffle, a croaky cough or a tickly throat, stay home. That's the clear message from the Ministry of Health, despite the fact there have been no new confirmed or probable cases of COVID-19 in New Zealand. Health officials insist that the country's best chance of stamping out the virus is to do what many are reluctant to do: stay away from work or school if you're sick. Our reporter Sarah Robson has more.
The Director-General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, was hammering home the message: if you're unwell, stay home.
I know that all of us probably are guilty at times of, if we've got a bit of a runny nose or a bit of a sore throat, we might go to work because it's not too bad, or we might, if our child's slightly unwell, send them to school. This is the time when we've got to be much, much more strict.
And that's something microbiologist Susie Wiles had to put into practice today.
Yes, I have a runny nose. I mean, I don't feel sick, so I've moved all my meetings online and everything. It is a really hard judgment to make. What I'm really also wary of is that I don't want anyone else to get this cold, if it is a cold, because that might make them more vulnerable.
Over the last few days, Dr. Wiles has been writing a pandemic preparedness plan for her lab.
And I put in there, if you have any mild symptoms, stay at home. Because if you can work from home and that's not impossible, then it's a good thing to do. And I actually thought that when I woke this morning, oh gosh, I wasn't expecting to have to enact the plan quite so quickly.
In Nelson, there was a mixed reaction to the Director-General of Health's advice.
I think I would, yeah. I've got a child to look after and school and work colleagues.
No, I get sore throats and sniffles all the time. It's nothing major. And besides, it's only me on my own there. I can't afford to stay home.
I'd just do the same thing, like stay home until the symptoms go away.
I just stayed off work based on that. We were getting advice where I work if you weren't well to stay away.
With big events coming up this weekend, like the Pacifica Festival in Auckland and the National Remembrance Service for the Christchurch mosque shootings, Ashley Bloomfield has a simple message.
Please stay home if you are unwell and watch them on TV or enjoy doing something else.
Meanwhile, McDonald's has put a temporary halt on people using their reusable coffee cups at McCafes. Like other coffee chains around the world concerned about the cleanliness of reusable cups, McDonald's says it's a temporary measure to protect the health of staff and customers. It's something these coffee drinkers agree with.
That makes sense. Working in an Italian restaurant and people bring their own gluten-free stuff for us to cook for them, and we don't accept that because it's not safe, it's not food safe. So I totally understand the coffee cup thing.
That's probably fair enough. The barista doesn't know, where it's been or what it's done. So I do agree with that.
Ashley Bloomfield says he's got a Keep Cup and he had some advice for cafe goers.
You shouldn't be going out with your Keep Cup if you're symptomatic. And so the main thing is if you've got your Keep Cup and you're going out for a coffee, then we'll assume you're well. This comes back to if you're not well, you're not going to be using your Keep Cup because you'll be at home.
What about Susie Wiles? If you're well, should you keep using your reusable cup?
Absolutely. And if you're unwell, then don't.
Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Sarah Robson, aho.
Vodafone sending its 1,200 Auckland workers home for a day at least to practice its pandemic plan in case COVID-19 becomes more widespread. Overseas, Google's asked all employees in North America to work remotely. Amazon, Microsoft and Facebook are also encouraging workers to stay at home in areas hit by the virus. Vodafone HR boss Katie Williams says the company already has flexible work locations, but this will be a large-scale simulation of a potential worst-case scenario should COVID-19 shut offices down.
We're going to lock down our entire Auckland office, so 5 floors, and ask all of our people in the Auckland office to work from home. This is a practice or a test for our response to coronavirus if it takes hold more seriously across the country.
So you're going to see if you can, get through a normal working day with absolutely nobody on site?
Exactly right. So the plan is that we won't let our people into the office at all, and our test is to see whether our people can still connect into our systems and still be fully productive while all working from their houses.
What about engineers? Don't they have to be on site, not technical term, but to tinker with things, or...?
No, we have a lot of digital processes and systems, and we have lots of sites across the country, so we are able to spread our people across different sites in the country if that's what's required. But most of our people are really capable and able to work from home, to work remotely.
How many people are we talking about here?
1,200 people.
So has this involved, I know you do some flexi working arrangements anyway, but is this a significant step upwards, and have you had to do any particular planning or modifications to allow this to happen?
You're right. We're really lucky in that we have had flexible working policies and tools in place for many, many years. So it's less of a difference for us than it may be for other companies who are less enabled to be mobile. But the key thing that it's required us to do is to communicate really clearly with our teams, not only in terms of what we're doing, why we're doing it, but also to be really clear that this is just a test. We do not have coronavirus in our organisation. We are doing all we can to protect ourselves and each other from any risk, but that this is an important test to make sure that we are able to stay productive and keep servicing our customers in the eventuality, if it happens, that coronavirus gets into their organisation.
So this is your Auckland office. What about other sites? Do you have offshore call centres or anything like that where you're doing trials?
We do. We are nationwide, so we have big offices in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and then a number of other offices around the country, Hamilton, Dunedin, etc., etc. We are only doing it in Auckland because it's our biggest building, and we believe if we can prove the concept in Auckland, then we know we're going to be safe and capable of making it happen in our slightly smaller buildings.
So in terms of other sort of social niceties like handshaking and greeting people and all the rest of it, what are you guys doing at the moment?
We're leaving that up to our people, and I do see some people around the organisation touching elbows or touching feet, which always looks unusual, but at the same time probably the right thing for that individual to be doing.
What are you doing, Katie? Are you doing elbow bumps or...?
I am still shaking hands, and in fact, I also do a lot of hugging, so I'm still hugging people. But what we are doing to try and offset that is that we have upped both our comms to our people to say, hey, do take care of your personal hygiene. We've put a lot of sanitizer around the organisation, and we've got keep calm and wash your hands signs through all our bathrooms to make sure that our people know that keeping themselves safe by washing their hands is really, really critical. But I'm still hugging people.
What about hot desking? Do you do that there?
We do. All of our people, including our CEO, all hot desk.
And so are you taking any other extra precautions in terms of cleaning?
Yes, we are. So we are now sterilising our organisation every night. For every 24 hours, we are doing a sterilisation of our organisation, including all our hot desk surfaces, but with particular focus on high traffic areas, things like door handles, lift buttons, the entry pads to get into the building, and so on and so on. But it is really important to up cleaning and sterilisation of our surfaces because we are so open plan, and we have that underway.
So that is more than what you would normally do, the level of clean that is happening every 24 hours?
Yes, very much so. So we do clean every night, but we don't normally sterilise, and we are sterilising all of our surfaces. And as I say, all of the things that we touch a lot, like cabling, where people put cables into their laptop as they move from desk to desk.
So does any of this affect your customers, what you're doing with this trial?
Our ambition, and that's one of the things that we'll be testing tomorrow, but our ambition is to make sure that our customers are completely unaffected and have no idea, frankly, that we are where we are working from. So our customer service is preeminent to us. It's very important, and we are working really hard to make sure that there is no impact on our customers whatsoever.
What about your retail stores?
Retail is tricky because we clearly can't close our retail stores. What we are doing, though, is that we again have upped the cleaning and sterilising of our retail stores, and that's the best that we can do at this stage.
And in terms of, do you have any staff in isolation or any staff who've had to self-isolate?
We do. We have a couple of people who we have asked to work from home for 14 days, so for the self-isolation period, not because they've been in contact with people with coronavirus, but because they've been in contact with people who have been in close contact with people with coronavirus. So at the moment, for Vodafoners, the closest our people have come to coronavirus is 2 degrees of separation. We are being very conservative, but we are asking those people to self-quarantine for 14 days to make sure and be absolutely positive that we are protecting them and the people around them at work.
And what's Vodafone's policy if someone is in isolation? Is that annual leave? How are you working it? You're a big company.
Because we are able to work from home, we are asking that person to work from home. Clearly, if they're unwell, then they will take sick leave. But otherwise, our expectation is that they will be able to be fully productive and will be able to work from home.
And that's Vodafone HR boss Katie Williams. And once again, we invited the Director General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, onto the program tonight. He declined. We had quite a few questions we wanted to ask, and as our reporter Louise Tanuth found out today, Aucklanders also have some of their own.
I wanted to ask that what our Prime Minister will have some policies for this situation. And the school will the school let students to have the online class if the situation gets worse?
I myself travelled back from Japan on Saturday, and they shut all the e-gates, which is fine, except for the people returning from Australia or ironically the United States. And then we just went through a big long queue. We were all queuing together, which is great after you come off a flight. To be told, to be asked if you went through North Korea, Italy, obviously the hot spots, and then we just walked through the gate and we were handed a flyer. That was it. And I was very concerned. I felt when I got to New Zealand that there'd be a little more better biosecurity. I was really, we're more worried about fruit coming in than we're obviously about the virus.
Yes, I'm concerned too much because I stay here with my family. And my daughter is 8 years old. She goes to the school, so I'm very much worried if the people are traveling from different countries and they are sending their children to the school. So that may cause problem. And if anyone in the family suffers, so everybody has to suffer.
Instead of going on with the big events, they should probably just cancel it, because it increased the chances of spreading, the coronavirus,
And Hawke's Bay farmers and leaders are urging the government to declare a drought as parts of the region experience the driest period on record. Central Hawke's Bay and Hastings are the worst hit, with farmers saying the lack of water has not only hit summer crops, but winter feed is now at risk if it doesn't rain soon. Here's our Hawke's Bay reporter, Anusha Bradley.
For some parts of Hawke's Bay, the 4 months between November and February have been the driest in 50 years. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council says conditions are similar to the last drought declared in 2013. The normally green and rainy Ruahine Ranges, which feeds the region's rivers, is unusually dry, and hundreds of farmers are now banned from taking river water to irrigate crops. Central Hawke's Bay farmer Alistair Setter is one of them. He says while his crops have suffered, it's not his biggest worry.
Just finished our last harvest yesterday. The yields on the later crops were down as a result of lack of moisture. But right now the issue is around regrassing and getting feed for winter. So that's what's really on our mind now. The next few weeks will be critical for rain.
If it doesn't rain, Alistair Setter fears finding feed will be tricky, as much of the North Island is also experiencing dry conditions. The president of Federated Farmers Hawke's Bay, Jim Galloway, says some farms are close to running out of water completely.
Because on quite a few farms, their water supply is getting low or non-existent, such as creeks are drying up, wells are dropping, and dams have dried out. So that's the biggest issue that farmers would be facing.
The Mayor of Central Hawke's Bay, Alex Walker, says relief is urgently needed as farmers face several challenges.
We have tuberculosis movement control going on, and we also have a COVID-affected meat market in particular when it comes to our sheep and beef properties. So we brought our Rural Advisory Group and Drought Committee together and have been collecting information for some time, and we have made a formal request to MPI and to the Minister to recognise an adverse event. We need to kick some resource into supporting our farmers.
It's not just farmers being hit. In the Central Hawke's Bay settlement of Onga Onga, where residents rely on bore water, local Bill Stevenson says groundwater levels are so low that in the last 3 weeks, 15 homes have run out of water.
Several in the village have got limited water, very limited water, and they take their washing to town and do their laundry in town. They have showers in town. One man has gone to the trouble of putting another bore down, and then he's dropped a submersible down it, and roughly about 25 grand it's cost him.
While locals suffer, Bill Stevenson says neighbouring dairy farms with deeper bores and huge water consents continue to irrigate their pastures. He believes this is making the current situation worse, and some residents are considering legal action against the regional council.
They gave out massive consents for water without knowing what water was there.
Drought declarations have already been made from Northland to Tararua, unlocking funding support from the government. A spokesperson for the Agriculture Minister, Damien O'Connor, says Hawke's Bay farmers will get support, and an announcement is imminent. For Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
And coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, thinking twice about reusing that Keep Cup, why COVID-19 shouldn't stop you saving the planet. The ANZ says falling demand at its Tikawiti branch means it's only going to open for business 3 days a week. And an Auckland high school special tribute to Christchurch's Muslim community as the anniversary of the mosque attacks approach. We would love your feedback. Are you still using your Keep Cup when you go and get your coffee in the mornings? And should New Zealand tighten up its border controls like Australia has in relation to visitors from Italy? Let us know your thoughts. Text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. And here's Susanna with the headlines.
The Serious Fraud Office has opened separate investigations into donations made in relation to the election campaigns of the Christchurch and Auckland mayors, Leanne Dalzell and Phil Goff, last year. The police last month referred both cases to the SFO. Questions have been raised about donations of campaigns run by both mayors. Australia has closed its doors to people arriving from Italy because of the coronavirus outbreak there, the worst outside China. COVID-19 has forced the whole of Italy into lockdown, restricting the movements of more than 60 million people. Australia has already banned foreigners arriving from China, Iran and South Korea, and Nationals leader Simon Bridges wants the same restrictions here. Farmers in Hawke's Bay are calling on the government to declare a drought and offer financial support, with some facing winter feed shortages. They say conditions are now the driest they've been in 50 years and government support is urgently needed. The farmers want a state of drought to be declared, and the Agriculture Minister says an announcement about Hawke's Bay is on its way. Joe Biden has extended his lead in the contest to become the US Democrat Party's presidential candidate. In the latest primaries, the former American vice president is on course to beat Bernie Sanders in Mississippi and Missouri, having already taken the biggest prize, Michigan. He told supporters President Donald Trump's policies have isolated the country and dishonoured its founding documents. The high-profile environmentalist and businessman Sir Rob Fenwick has died of cancer. The co-founder of the organic composting company Living Earth and other companies, Sir Rob was knighted in 2016 for contributions to sustainable development, wildlife protection, waste minimisation, Antarctica and iwi development. The Department of Conservation's head, Lou Sanson, a close personal friend of Sir Rob's, says he had an uncanny knack for pulling groups and agendas together to make things happen. Those are the latest news headlines on RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. If you're just joining us, this is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen, and it's time for business news. Another busy day for our team, including Nona Peltier, who joins me in the studio. So retail spending, we've got some figures, have we, Nona? And what, Westall spending?
Yes, these are the electronic card spending, so that's cashless society, basically. Yep. That's not with real money, it's those credit cards that we use.
So you could have done this from sitting at home on your computer?
Well, you might have used your debit card, you might have used your credit card, you might have bought it online, but you would have been shopping with your credit card of some kind. And, well, interesting numbers. Surprisingly better than the market was expecting. So February was one of those months where we did see, we expected to see a decline in spending because of the coronavirus. But so the market was thinking, there'd be a drop of like 0.3% was the market expectation. Mm-hmm. And the price, the actual number of the volume of sales rose 0.6%, which is a lot more. It's quite a difference. Why? Interestingly, was a 2.4% rise in grocery shop spending. So that was like a very large number, I'd say. What was it like? Something like a...
Is this people stockpiling, do we think?
Well,
Potentially?
It was near... Look, I'll tell you, it wasn't just a big rise. It was like the biggest dollar rise in like 2 years. So that's a heck of a lot of toilet paper, wouldn't you say?
And cans of food,
and
maybe.
Cans of food. But, Stats New Zealand couldn't say what was really the cause of it. But one might assume hospitality, so that's spending on restaurants and so on, was down 0.8%, which you would have thought might be a lot lower than that, but no,
So this was for the month of
February,
right?
Yeah, February is returning strange numbers, so it's hard to know exactly what that really reflects. Most people are waiting for March numbers to give them a better idea
of a trend of some sort.
Yes, because so the February numbers are a little bit perplexing, but a 2.4% rise in grocery shopping, that's a big one.
Interesting. Okay, should we talk about the airlines? Now, obviously, they're having a rough ride at the moment.
No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. Many cancellations and contracting of routes and all the rest of it. So they have these slots, right, to land at the airport, and it's vital that they use them.
And they cost quite a pretty penny, too. I mean, Air New Zealand recently sold one of theirs at Heathrow, I believe, for $40 million.
So what is going on with this at the moment?
Well, this is really interesting. So if you do not use your spot, or your slot, rather, you lose it. It's a use it or lose it kind of deal. And so some airlines, not necessarily here in New Zealand, but some airlines are flying what they call ghost flights, which has got planes that have no passengers on them,
just so that they can retain their landing and takeoff spots.
Yes, but it's quite a waste, isn't it? I mean, these are not, why do this? Why not just kind of come up with a solution so that we can hold
it's a lot
spots?
of carbon waste for a start.
It is. There's no real gain to doing this, and it's against some of the goals of these companies involved to cut, emissions, as you say. So believe it or not, the Board of Slot Coordination for New Zealand is meeting as we speak to discover and discuss how they could coordinate this across the globe so that airlines won't have to do this.
And so that there'll be, are they also aiming for a consistent approach across airports?
That's the idea, yeah, so that, you're not forced to fly your aircraft into a location just to hold your slot in the meantime. So, interesting times. A lot of communication going on between these very large organizations. These are like Auckland Airport's involved. Of course, the airlines are involved. And this Board of Slot Coordination.
Who would have known such a thing existed? But
never.
We were talking to Greg Foran earlier in the week, and he was saying that they have reduced capacity by 26% in and out of Asia. So again, this problem that you're presenting is they would still have landing and takeoff spots.
Yes. And this would resolve it, whatever they're going to come up with. Now, they're meeting now, so they've been meeting all afternoon. I suppose they're going to continue to meet into the evening. It's quite a big deal. And I guess they're waiting for their counterparts in the UK to wake up, because it's quite early there.
What else has been happening on the markets today, Nona?
Oh, my goodness. Just another crazy day on the markets, Lisa. That's all I can tell you.
Crazy good or crazy bad?
Well, I guess it depends on where you're sitting. So this morning, the local market, the NZX, opened up really strongly. And, really, it went up to 2.7%. That's a big rise, almost reversing all of the loss the day before, 3%. However, by the end of this day, we actually closed down 0.2%. That's 24 points down to 10,874. And the ASX ASX 200 was down nearly 3%. Now, this is really interesting. Why would this have happened? But it's because the market was expecting Donald Trump, because he promised yesterday that he'd be back with his plan, and no plan materialized.
This is his business kind of support package.
Economic stimulus deal never happened. So the market's kind of lost a bit of faith there, like that's not what you want.
And so that's what, our second day in the 10,000s?
Yeah. So we looked strong, and then we ended back where we started. So that's unfortunate. Then overall Asia basically disappointed. And luckily, I don't know if it's a luckily thing. I mean, our dollar gained overnight, and at the moment we're holding steady. We hung on to those gains. So whatever we get overnight, we end up hanging on to. And that's partly because the US dollar is taking a bit of a hammering because of the confidence situation. So the New Zealand dollar had, we were trading at 62.9 US cents, 96.5 Australian, and 48.7 British pence.
Thanks, Nona. Nona Peltier with our business wrap. Now, in breaking news, in the past couple of minutes, the Prime Minister has widened this country's travel ban to include those from Italy. New Zealanders travelling from Italy will be asked to self-isolate for 14 days. Jacinda Ardern has also asked New Zealanders with underlying health issues to reconsider taking a cruise. We'll have more on that, but that is an expansion of the travel restrictions. They were for Northern Italy only. Now it seems they have been extended to all people travelling from Italy. We will bring you more details shortly. Parliament was less order, more circus last night when MPs lost track of what had and hadn't been voted on during the debate on abortion reform. The legislation would remove abortion from the Crimes Act, and while much of the debate centred on concerns about access to late-term abortions, it was safe zones that wreaked havoc. Safe zones are a space outside abortion clinics where protesters aren't allowed. In a strange turn of events, it was too late by the time MPs discovered the amendment had been lost. Our political reporter Jo Moyer explains.
MPs were caught napping in the House last night when the voting in the abortion reform bill saw MPs vote down safe zones. ACT leader David Seymour's proposal was voted for in two parts. The first narrowly voted down 59 votes to 56. But when a vote was called for on a second part, it passed on a verbal vote only. Green MP Jan Logie was among those surprised by what had happened.
I just checked the vote and how it evolved around David Seymour's SOP and what the outcome of that vote was.
I put the vote.
Yes,
I said
I'm just wanting to check in to see if I needed to correct my party, my vote.
Well, it was a vote on the voices.
But what was the outcome for us to know?
The outcome was that the ayes, that the amendment was agreed to.
Also confused was the bill's sponsor, Justice Minister Andrew Little.
We voted on 464 earlier this evening.
Yeah, but we only voted on Clause 5.
Today, the Prime Minister was trying to save face for the government, saying nobody was at fault.
There is no blame here. This was simply an outcome of democracy and process.
Not ideal for Jacinda Ardern, though, as she was in favour of safe zones.
I would have preferred that those safe zones were in place. I absolutely accept that we've got that balance in New Zealand with people being able to have freedom of expression, but also being able to safely access medical support and services. And so that's where my concern lay, but that hasn't been the result of the House's debate, and that's democracy.
ACT leader David Seymour isn't at all surprised by the amateur hour gaffe.
I'm a libertarian. I've never had a great confidence in collectively making laws for millions of other people in a tiny room. But, that's the system we have, and I do my best within the system.
He thinks Mr Little has given up on trying to reverse last night's blunder.
I think that the numbers are there to keep the amendment and keep the free speech spirit in the bill. And I think it's unlikely now there will be a procedure to reverse last night's events, given the Minister said he's not interested.
And Mr Little admitted today it could be a waste of time trying to do so.
Well, you've got to be sure to go through the procedural hoops to get there that you've got the numbers to do that, and I'm not sure that they're there.
National Party leader Simon Bridges says the vote landed in the right place, firmly against safe zones.
But I think the reality is we have a situation where the law already has provisions for that, and so I would question the necessity for this particular law, whether it adds anything, and I think also it's a symbolic issue really around freedom of speech.
But Green Party MP Jan Logie is not happy.
We're looking into that at the moment. Obviously, we're pretty disappointed at the error, and so channeling that into trying to find a solution.
Without Mr Little's support, it's unclear whether the Greens would even have the numbers to get it across the line. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jo Moyer.
A police officer first on the scene of an alleged rape by another officer has described being told two very different stories about what happened that night. A 29-year-old policeman is on trial in the Auckland District Court this month, accused of raping his colleague as she slept. Today, the Crown's second witness told the jury of his shock in hearing the woman's story for the first time. Our court reporter Annika Smith filed this story.
The man has been on trial in the Auckland District Court since last week after pleading not guilty to one charge of indecent assault and another of sexual violation. This afternoon, the jury heard from a male police officer who shared a unit with the defendant that night. The group had booked out a Kirikiri motel to work during Waitangi commemorations last year. The witness, who can't be identified, said the team had a strict don't screw the crew policy, but socialised with one another off-duty, as they did the night before Waitangi Day. He said the officers played drinking games at the motel the night of the alleged rape.
We were all just having a good time, having fun. I think we have a lot of banter with each other, and it's always a friendly environment.
The witness said he and the defendant went to bed around 1 a.m. The next thing he remembered was the accused waking him up.
I've slowly woken up, and that's when he's told me that something's happened with him, and he said that she was quite upset.
The witness said he thought the pair had a disagreement, but the man told him it was serious.
He said that they'd hooked up, and while they were doing it, she stopped him. She said she couldn't do it anymore and started crying.
The man told the court he went to the woman's unit and found her crying hysterically. He said the woman told her she was sleeping and woke up to the defendant raping her.
I was just in shock at the time. I just told her, said I was sorry. I didn't know what else to say. I did want to console her physically, but I knew it wasn't a good idea.
The man said he took care in what he said and did because the room was a crime scene. It's the Crown's case the man raped the woman as she slept after she'd earlier rejected a sexual advance from him. However, his defence says the woman was awake and a willing participant in what was a pre-arranged hookup. The woman has denied this and suggestions from the defence she was lying about her story. Earlier today, she told the court she had concerns about approaching her manager that night.
I felt pretty vulnerable with what had just happened to me. I guess I just didn't know who I could trust or who I could go to.
She said there was no pre-arranged hookup with the man, and the reason she left her unit door unlocked that night was because the motel was full of police officers. The trial before Judge Thomas and a jury continues at the Auckland District Court. This is Annika Smith.
Former Vice President Joe Biden appears to be on an unstoppable charge for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. He's won Michigan, Mississippi and Missouri in today's primaries. That extends his lead over his last remaining challenger, Bernie Sanders, who was desperately hoping for a win in Michigan to keep his campaign alive. The BBC's Peter Bowes says Mr Biden's win in Michigan is crucial.
This is a crucial state. It's one of those bellwether states. It's a swing state that Donald Trump managed to win, bringing the state back to the Republicans for the first time since 1988. Very close race, and to do well in that state, whether it's Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, is crucial when it comes to the general election. So as the results stand so far, it is turning out to be another good night for Joe Biden, building on the momentum that he won on Super Tuesday 7 days ago when he won 10 out of the 14 states. What we're seeing, it's interesting looking at some of the exit polls, people talking, Democrats talking about how they've reached their decisions. Those decisions seem to have been quite late in the day after Joe Biden managed to win in South Carolina. That was seen as the turning point, a state with a high number of African Americans, a state in terms of its demographics more similar to the rest of the country than some of the earlier states where he didn't do very well. And the fact that he managed to win there persuaded a lot of Democrats that Joe Biden indeed had what it takes to win across the country, and a lot of them are saying that the reason that they are going for him is that they think he is the best candidate to beat Donald Trump at the general election in November. And it's really presenting quite a stark choice now. If it were Bernie Sanders, the attack from Donald Trump would be that he's a socialist, and poll after poll has suggested that line of attack may well be successful for Donald Trump, that there's still a huge problem with many Americans with a candidate that labels himself as a democratic socialist as he does. Joe Biden is seen as more middle ground, of course, linked to Barack Obama. He was his vice president, and clearly there's a lot of inbuilt support there.
Peter Bowes with that report. And back home, keep calm and keep the reusable coffee cup. That advice comes after a wave of cafes have ditched keep cups because of hygiene concerns in the wake of COVID-19. Coronavirus is spread through droplets transmitted through the likes of coughing. But microbiologist Dr. Susie Wiles says that getting rid of keep cups is an overreaction. Well, one coffee cafe is ignoring the rush to get rid of keep cups. Coffee Club has 66 cafes and makes hundreds of coffees each day in reusable cups. Its New Zealand director Andy Lucas reckons there's no need to lose the keep cups just yet.
We've got our thermal mugs, which we've always given a discount to our customers who bring thermal mugs in, obviously from a point of view of sustainability and really trying to promote that. We've done that for a good couple of years now, and yeah, I suppose with the hype and the fear around coronavirus, we were aware that some other groups have stopped allowing customers to bring their own reusable mugs in, but we don't believe that that's necessary. I mean, the health and well-being of our customers and our team is paramount, but I believe that we can continue to, provide a healthy workplace and ensure that, ensure that we're still providing the right service to our customers, ensuring that we can still provide them with, options around sustainability without compromising, their health and hygiene as well.
So just to be clear, if I bring in a reusable cup to one of your coffee places, you'll still fill it up for me? You
Correct.
Don't have a problem?
No, correct, that's right. We've introduced, just in the last 48 hours, we've introduced some new protocol around processes and what our team members should be doing. So it's really just a little bit of common sense that we've introduced to sort of say, well, that the reusable mugs that the customers bring in, they shouldn't be near the coffee machine where they can contaminate. They shouldn't be put right under the group handle, which is where your coffee comes from. It's really about making sure that the coffee shots that we call it, would be caught in a different vessel that's poured into the reusable mug, and then the milk is poured in, and anything that does come in contact for whatever reason, it just goes through the commercial dishwasher out the back. So again, I think it's just about us sort of improving the systems and just being a little bit more cautious in that regard. But yes, we will continue to do that, and of course we provide a discount as well.
So Andy, do your baristas touch the keep cup still?
They do, and they have to, because there's no other way that they can make the drink for the customer. But again, it's just it's like a lot of the messaging that we've been hearing is making sure that you wash your hands regularly, making sure that you're not touching your face and other parts that can contaminate that after you've handled something like that. So a bit of common sense goes a long way.
So just so I've got this clear in my head, I bring my cup in and I hand it over to your lovely person behind the counter. It's a keep cup.
Yep.
When the barista goes through the process of making that coffee for me, what happens? They don't put the cup underneath the machine like I would normally see them do?
No, correct. No, so it shouldn't go under the machine. What we would do is we would catch the coffee shot in a different vessel. That gets poured into the keep cup. That vessel which is used then gets washed every time, so we don't reuse that. And then if it's a milk-based drink, well then the milk would be poured from our milk jugs into the vessel, and then it's handed back to the customer.
And those things like the little container you put the shot of coffee in and
Yep.
the milk
Yep.
container, you wouldn't touch those to the keep cup. You would try to avoid that.
Correct. And like I said, even if they, let's say the milk jug does touch it, that would need to go through the commercial dishwasher that we have. So yeah, but at the end of the day, the team member would avoid it touching the keep cup. Certainly the little vessel that we would use, and it would just be a little latte glass, the vessel we use to catch the coffee shot that we put into the thermal mug or the keep cup, that would get washed every time regardless.
Okay, got you. So this for you is about, well, it's important for you to maintain the sustainability, save the planet as well as keep us healthy, in essence.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you know, we obviously understand the seriousness around coronavirus, and look, at the end of the day, it's this sort of practice, you know, should be maintained regardless. You know, regardless of coronavirus or not, it's about just ensuring the health and well-being of our customers and our teams. So, yeah, I think that's the important thing.
And how are you keeping across advice, Andy? Are you looking or taking a lead from any particular area?
Obviously, the Ministry of Health is something that we're checking regularly. The media in general as well. We're making sure that we practice a lot of those things that are coming down from the Ministry of Health. We've got regular memos going out to our network, quoting parts of the Ministry of Health and what they're recommending in terms of hygiene procedures as well.
So, in terms of advice that you've got, you've had nothing from the Ministry of Health specifically dealing with keep cups?
We haven't, no.
Okay, so that is Coffee Club New Zealand Director Andy Lucas, and they're going to continue refilling your reusable cups with coffee. As we said, we spoke to microbiologist Susie Wiles, and she says it's an overreaction ditching those cups, and there's no science for it. Here she is.
If somebody has been sneezing and coughing onto their hands and then they hold their cup and they hand it over, that is certainly a way that germs can transmit or can move from one person to another. What we're asking people is if they are sneezing and coughing, that they're not doing that onto their hands and they're not doing that onto their cups. So I don't see any reason why there would, people wouldn't be accepting keep cups from healthy people. And if people are sick, they shouldn't be out and about coughing on their cups, I guess. We know we don't have widespread transmission of coronavirus here in New Zealand yet, so I think maybe it's just a little premature, a little bit of an overreaction.
And that's Dr. Susie Wiles there. The Russian parliament has voted through a constitutional amendment that could allow Vladimir Putin to remain as president until 2036. If members pass a final vote on Wednesday, he will be allowed to run for 2 more terms after he'd been due to step down. The BBC's Sarah Rainsford has more details from Moscow.
This was a move many saw coming, though no one quite knew how. In the end, it was an ex-cosmonaut who stepped up in Parliament to propose the change to the constitution meant to keep Vladimir Putin in power. As the world goes through cosmic shifts, the first woman in space told MPs, we need a strong leader, a moral authority. People depend on Mr. Putin, Valentina Tereshkova said, and they're worried about what happens after 2024. That's when Vladimir Putin should step down, after a quarter of a century in charge here. Today, he appeared in Parliament in person to back the plan to keep him on. He talked a lot about security and stability, continuity at a time of risk and threats. He did try to sound reluctant about staying on, stressing the need in principle for a rotation of powers. But in the end, Mr. Putin said the decision would lie with the Russian people, who are due to vote on a whole package of reforms next month.
I want to assure you that I have always been guided exclusively by the current and long-term interests of Russia, by the will of our people. That's why I propose that these amendments to the Constitution should be decided on by our citizens. How you vote on the 22nd of April, that's how it will be.
This move isn't without risk for Mr. Putin. When he last extended his stay in power through a temporary job swap with his prime minister, huge crowds came out onto the streets in protest. This time, they're facing the prospect of him staying on in the Kremlin into his 80s.
And that's Sarah Rainsford with that report. Let's get to some of your feedback now before the news at 6. On the Keep Cups, this is the reusable coffee mugs. Anna has got in touch to say, can you please tell listeners to order their coffee to have in and then pour the coffee into their Keep Cup? Don't let this add to our terrible waste problem. Good idea, Anna. And others of you have got in touch around coronavirus saying, telling people to take sick leave is all very well. Many workers, for example, in public-facing roles like retail and hospitality, get only the legal minimum entitlement of 5 days paid sick leave per year. And that's also supposed to include days to look after sick children and other dependents. Many simply don't have the sick leave nor the money to take days off. New Zealanders will pay a collective price for New Zealand's weak and ungenerous employment conditions. Someone else says, so if we all have to take more time off, is the government going to increase sick leave entitlements? And Rod has got in contact from Wellington saying, I think this is in respect of the discussion around the Keep Cups, what about McDonald's touch screen menus? Gross, says Rod. And someone else says, please, I'm concerned about WOMAD going ahead this weekend, an international event. I know they are taking precautions, but I feel like this is much bigger than the Pacifica Festival and Christchurch festivals. There you have it.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leia tawa tēnei. New Zealand has joined Australia in restricting arrivals from Italy because of its coronavirus outbreak. Australia announced this afternoon that foreign travellers arriving from Italy will no longer be allowed in. COVID-19 has killed more than 600 Italians and forced the whole country into lockdown. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has just announced that travellers from Italy will be required to self-isolate for 14 days after their arrival. She says a decision has been made not to enact a full ban like Australia's because this option offers more flexibility. The Serious Fraud Office has opened separate investigations into donations made to election campaigns of the Christchurch and Auckland mayors, Leanne Dalzell and Phil Goff. The police last month referred both cases to the SFO. Questions had been raised about some donations to Ms Dalzell's campaign last year, and last September a formal complaint was laid over Mr Goff's 2016 declaration of cash donations from fundraising auctions. However, it's not confirmed whether this is related to the SFO's investigation. A spokesperson for Mr Goff says he has not been told he's being investigated. The Green Party is trying to save safe zones for women seeking abortions after MPs were caught napping in Parliament last night. Safe zones outside abortion clinics are designed to stop protesters from harassing and intimidating people arriving and leaving. ACT leader David Seymour's proposal to scrap them from proposed abortion legislation was passed on a verbal vote, to the surprise of many MPs who apparently hadn't realised the significance of the vote. The Justice Minister Andrew Little says he won't be trying to reverse it, but the Green MP Jan Logie says her party is.
We're looking into that at the moment. Obviously, we're pretty disappointed at the error, and so channeling that into trying to find a solution.
The Green MP Jan Logie. A petition has been presented to Parliament asking the government to bring up Australia's deportation policy at the United Nations. A UN review of Australia's human rights record is due in November, and the co-founder of iwi in Australia, Philippa Payne, says the controversial policy needs to be aired on the biggest stage possible. And she says the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, is the one to do it.
We have a political leader, a Prime Minister at the moment, who's actually hot property globally. Everybody loves her in the international spectrum. She handled the mosque shootings with such class and such mana that I believe that the same can be said about the human rights abuses that are going on in Australia.
Philippa Payne says the average person spends almost 500 days in detention before deportation. A police officer first on the scene of an alleged rape has described being told two very different stories about what happened that night. A 29-year-old policeman is on trial in the Auckland District Court, accused of raping a colleague in a Kerikeri motel last February. Annika Smith reports.
Today, the jury has heard from a man who worked with both the complainant and the defendant. He said the accused woke him up the night of the alleged rape and told him the woman was upset. The witness said the defendant told him he'd been having sex with her when she started crying and said she couldn't do it anymore. He said he went to the women's motel unit and she told him the man had raped her while she was sleeping. Ko Annika Smith aho.
Several Southland families remain out of their damaged homes as the region continues to recover from flooding early last month. Emergency Management Southland has confirmed the residents of 19 properties are affected. Recovery Manager Ken Swinney says there are still major disruptions to deal with and the recovery phase will continue for many months. More than 30 applications have been made to the Southland Mayoral Relief Fund. It's coming up to 4 minutes past 6. Hurricanes co-captain Dane Coles will make his first start of the Super Rugby season after being named to play against the Chiefs in Hamilton on Friday night. The All Blacks hooker missed the side's first 2 games in South Africa and Argentina and has come off the bench in 2 of their 3 matches since then. His co-captaincy with TJ Perenara formally comes into effect tonight. Meanwhile, the All Blacks duo Damian McKenzie and Atu Morley are back for the Chiefs. McKenzie has been named to start at fullback, while Morley comes onto the bench as a prop reserve. Mitchell Brown will start at lock in place of Canadian international Tyler Ardron, who has been ruled out with an infection. This year's Olympics could be delayed by a year or 2 if the coronavirus outbreak prevents the Games being held in Tokyo in July and August. Organising committee member Haruyuki Takahashi has told the Wall Street Journal the financial cost of cancellation or holding an Olympics without spectators would be too great for them not to be held at some stage. He says the committee's executive board has yet to discuss COVID-19's impact on the Games because their most recent meeting was last December, before the epidemic spread. The first 2 World Cup rowing regattas of the year, due to be held in Italy, have both been cancelled because of the virus. New Zealand crews had been scheduled to compete in the second round. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Simon Morris reviews a new movie about the Tongan wrestling scene. We continue the story of the widows of Shahada, just short of a year after the Christchurch mosque attacks, and there's a sofa session with the Kiwi folk Indian classical trio that is Pangaea. That's Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, a few showers in the west, spreading everywhere tomorrow. Auckland to Taranaki, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Central High Country. Scattered showers, possibly heavy with thunderstorms in Bay of Plenty and Central High Country. Clearing from the south tonight. Fine weather tomorrow. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, mostly cloudy with a few showers. Whanganui to Kapiti Coast, fine apart from isolated inland showers. Wellington and Wairarapa, isolated showers retreating to coastal Wairarapa and becoming fine elsewhere, cloudy tomorrow. Nelson and Bulla, a few showers, some heavy, possibly thundery inland, clearing tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland mainly fine. Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy periods, a few showers clearing, fine apart from cloud morning and night tomorrow. Chatham Island, showers clearing tomorrow, but remaining cloudy. RNZ National, it's coming up to 7 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna, and thank you for joining us. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. If you're just tuning in, the government has in the past half hour extended its restrictions on travellers arriving in New Zealand from Italy to prevent more cases of COVID-19 spreading. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says travellers coming from any part of Italy will now be required to self-isolate for 14 days, but a full ban on travellers won't be brought in. She says that's because the self-isolation option offers more flexibility and is working well for New Zealand. Ms Ardern has encouraged anyone travelling to Italy from New Zealand to reconsider their plans. Italy has the highest death count from coronavirus outside of China, with 463 people killed. Here in New Zealand, there are still only 5 confirmed cases of COVID-19. But the effects of the illness are continuing to hit hard. Today, one of the world's biggest music festivals, Coachella, joined the growing list of events which are being cancelled or postponed amid the outbreak. And as border closures and travel restrictions ramp up, New Zealanders planning on trips to Europe or America for their summer are scrambling to see how they will be affected. Travel agents say people are opting to delay or cancel their trips, but that could end up being a costly change for holiday goers, depending on what your insurer is willing to cough up. Nita Blake-Person reports.
Auckland man Sam Jardine Coombe had been gearing up for the trip of a lifetime to Coachella.
Had all tickets, accommodation sorted and paid for, and only to find it's been postponed due to the coronavirus.
The festival, which was due to take place in California in early April, has now been delayed until October to stem the spread of COVID-19. Ticket holders have yet to find out how they can get a refund, but Sam says he won't be relying on his travel insurance to come to the rescue.
I'm confident that the providers I've gone through, so like Coachella or Airbnb, will refund, because Coachella, I feel, will have an obligation to, and Airbnb, it's if you cancel by a certain date, you get a refund, and it says that when you sign up to a property. But if I had to rely on my travel insurance, I would not be confident that this corona would, or a pandemic in general, would be covered, actually. Couldn't see it in the fine print, but call me a skeptic. I would not be surprised if an insurance company tried to wiggle out of it.
Welcome to One Cover Travel Insurance. If you're calling in regards to the coronavirus, please hold and listen to the menu options.
Sam isn't the only one calling his insurer right now to see what his options are. As border controls ramp up across Europe, many New Zealanders planning a trip to the continent for summer are re-evaluating.
There has been some cancellations. There's been a lot more people who are deferring travel till later this year and into 2021.
House of Travel's Brent Thomas says people worried about their travel insurance need to contact their provider, as there are lots of different policies out there. For example, if you're with Southern Cross and purchased your insurance before the end of January, you will be covered, but that is limited in Italy, Japan, South Korea and Iran. If you bought your policy with Tower before January 24th, you may be able to get some help if you're in China's Hubei province. If you bought a policy after that date, there is no cover for coronavirus-related claims. If you're with One Cover, they don't cover pandemics or epidemics or known events in mass media, so any claim relating to coronavirus is unlikely to be covered. For customers with state or AMI, there's coronavirus-related cover available, but not if you're travelling to China or Iran. Brent Thomas says to be sure, people should go to the source.
Recommendation is for people to contact their insurance provider, find out exactly what is covered, and so they go with the knowledge exactly before they head overseas.
He says the COVID-19 situation is now well known and will impact what cover people can get.
With our insurance provider, they are still accepting claims for medical under COVID, but that doesn't mean that they're going to accept those, because obviously every case is quite different, depends on whether you've got pre-existing, etc. But also what we do know is it's a known event, obviously has been since late January, so people can't expect therefore to take out an insurance policy today and think all things are going to be covered because of it, simply because it is a known event and the insurance companies have advised that.
And down but not out, Sam Jardine-Coombe is now switching plans to make the most of next month's holiday.
So we're still going to go to LA until that becomes, on the top 5 corona list. We'll still go there and we'll just see what there is to see. Yeah, but no Coachella. Bucket list not ticked off.
For Checkpoint, Nita Blakeperson.
The New Zealand Cruise Association is accusing health officials of unfairly rocking the boat by warning people off overseas cruises. Official government advice on MFAT's safe travel site says New Zealanders, particularly those with underlying health concerns, should reconsider taking an overseas cruise at this time due to COVID-19. It says close contact on board can speed up the spread, and some ships have been declined entry to ports, which can have significant consequences for travellers. The Diamond cruise ship, dubbed the floating petri dish, spent weeks in lockdown in Japan after passengers tested positive for COVID-19, and New Zealanders on board were placed in quarantine at Whangaparaoa on their return home. But Kevin O'Sullivan from the New Zealand Cruise Association says they're being unfairly targeted, and he does not accept the idea that cruise passengers face a greater risk than others.
The reality is it still continues to be a safe environment. The standard of hygiene on cruise ships is very high, and it's been ramped up even more recently. Now, the people boarding cruise are quite strictly controlled. Those who are boarding in New Zealand go through a long questionnaire process, as well as being monitored by medical staff before they can go on board the ship in terms of the temperature control and so on. So the cruise industry worldwide and locally has taken it very seriously and wanting to maintain the level of hygiene and increase it on board. So you will find that when you get on board a ship, the levels to cleanliness will be higher than probably you're likely to get anywhere. So I think that's why we believe the industry has been unfairly targeted.
I want to talk about your increased hygiene and cleaning in a minute, but first, medical professionals say that you may not exhibit symptoms of coronavirus for 6 to 7 days. So even if you're taking people's temperature, someone could develop the virus once they're on board. And this warning goes on to say that the virus can spread quickly on board cruises due to close contact between passengers, and that cruise ships have indeed been put into quarantine. We know that. Cruise ships are a risk, aren't they, Kevin?
I don't think they're any more risky than any other environment where people are likely to be mingling, and I include concerts, going to movies, any area where you may be in close contact with somebody else. And in fact, as I said, I think they're a safer environment because they're a cleaner environment. What's the average age of a person on a cruise? Generally, New Zealand, it's around about the median age is around about 50. It's not the elderly and infirm that people seem to think travelling on cruise. It's a whole range of ages, from babies all the way through to older people. So, and on a normal cruise, how often would you have someone die? I don't know. I don't think anybody keeps any information like that. But I also liken it to a population of a small town. 3,000 to 4,000 people in a small town. You're going to have somebody sick of something at any given time. But it's unlikely to be COVID-19. They could be coming down with a cold or have some other ailment just because of the sheer size of the population. That age of 50 that you gave me is the midpoint, isn't it? You would, have a number of people who are, 70 plus on board? Yeah, I guess, again, like any demographic of a number of people of that size, you have a full range of ages. And we know from the statistics, those are the people who are most at risk from coronavirus, aren't they? Well, I'm in that category myself, and I guess I don't particularly feel as I'm any more risk than anybody else. And I think it's unreasonable, really, to target, again, the fact that crews might have older people. Everywhere has older people. So are you planning an overseas cruise anytime soon? I would love to. I'm certainly not planning on curtailing any travel, and I'm looking forward to taking another cruise later this year, and possibly again next year. Okay, so in terms of increased health and safety measures, what are cruise ships doing differently? Well, as I say, they do have elevated cleaning regimes as well now too. So what does that look like? Before this came in, you always had a lot of cleaning bays before you went in to eat. That's been ramped up, so there are places to clean and make sure you're washing your hands thoroughly in many other areas of the ship now. Plus, bear in mind that they have very good medical facilities on board the ship as well too. So, increased cleaning prior to meals. Anything else? The cabins are cleaned regularly as well too. Every surface is cleaned regularly. As I say, the hygiene standards are greater than pretty well any other area that I can think of. So to be clear, Kevin, do you not accept that there is potentially a higher risk to people on a cruise ship than, say, some other environments? No, I don't accept that. And so your advice to anyone considering a cruise would be what? It's great fun. Go and do it. Don't let what's happening at the moment ruin your life for some unreasonable and irrational fear. And to the people who have given this advice, because it is obviously official government advice on the Travel Safe website, what do you say to them? Well, I would like to think that they will reevaluate it in as short a time as possible, and not just in New Zealand but at other places as well, and look at what the real risks are and get back to what should be a fairly normal state of affairs. I'd like to think that would happen sooner rather than later.
And that is Kevin O'Sullivan, who is from the New Zealand Cruise Association. It is 19 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Labour Party MP Louisa Wall has accepted a petition at Parliament today asking MPs to dob Australia to the United Nations over its human rights record. The UN is due to review Australia's human rights record later this year. Ms Wall vowed to continue the fight against Australia's deportation policy. Ben Strang reports.
About 200 New Zealand citizens detained throughout Australia or Christmas Island have signed the petition. The detainees want Australia to exclude long-term permanent residents from its policy of deporting those found guilty of crimes, and they want an easier path to Australian citizenship. Philippa Payne, the co-founder of Iwi in Australia, says it's an international embarrassment for Australia, and the best way to bring about a change is to keep mentioning it at the UN.
Australia are not willing to come forward and be morally held accountable for their actions. In fact, they've been quite immoral in their actions and causing a lot of harm and damage to people. And New Zealand society is picking up the tab on that. And I think it's time for our government to step forward as a leader in this world and actually state that Australia's human rights abuses need to be addressed by the United Nations.
Last month, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, admonished Australia's policy, telling Prime Minister Scott Morrison to stop deporting his people and his problems. Ms Payne says Jacinda Ardern's international reputation means other nations will sit up and take notice.
We have a political leader, a Prime Minister at the moment, who's actually hot property globally. Everybody loves her in the international spectrum. She handled the mosque shootings with such class and such mana that I believe that the same can be said about the human rights abuses that are going on in Australia.
Since Australia changed Section 501 of its Migration Act in 2014, more than 2,000 people have been sent back to New Zealand. Clive Paku was initially charged for a crime and obtained bail 6 weeks later. He says immigration officials turned up while he was on bail and started the process of deporting him. He's never faced the court for his actions and says trial dates keep being shifted because he can't attend court. He says he successfully overturned his deportation order only to have another one issued.
They gave me a piece of paper to say that here's your visa. I was over the moon. All week I was over the moon. My family were over the moon. And then they gave me a notice of intention of cancelling that visa that they just issued me.
What was that like?
Heartbreaking. Just kicks you right back down rock bottom again because you know you've got a big fight going back up again.
That all happened while Clive Paku was on Christmas Island, where he says he saw detainees turn to self-harm and sometimes suicide. He was in tears while talking about the cost it took on his family. He didn't see his children for 3 years. But his life is now on the rebound, and 3 of his children are living with him again. He'll never forget picking them up from the airport.
It was heartbreaking, but also overwhelming, just to hold them again, just to see them sleep under my roof again, waking up in the morning, cooking them breakfast again, like we always did. Had a family breakfast every Sunday, just hearing their laugh, seeing them move around. Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Race Relations Commissioner Meng Foon says the New Zealand Human Rights Commission supports the petition and wants to see it addressed at the United Nations. He's highly critical of Australia's policy, saying the average stay in detention in Australia is 496 days, while in Canada it's just 12. The UN will scrutinise Australia's human rights record in November. For Checkpoint, Ben Strang.
There's fears that ANZ Bank slashing its opening hours at its Te Kuiti branch could lead to more elderly people in the region being ripped off. The banks say customers' visits to its branches have plummeted in recent years, and it's been forced to close the branch on Mondays and Fridays. Hamish Cardwell filed this report.
It's becoming a familiar story for rural New Zealanders. This week, ANZ announced its Te Kuiti branch will only open Tuesday through Thursday from next month. Up until now, it's been open 5 days a week. It's joining most of the other major banks in the King Country Te Rohe Portai hub town, who now have restricted opening hours. Last year, the government went so far as to strike a deal with the major banks to promise not to scupper any more regional branches, with dozens being shuttered in recent years. The region's Mayor John Robertson says it's another blow for an area in the grip of drought that's reeling from dozens of job losses from the local sawmill just last month.
These are tough times, and if you put coronavirus type issues and China closing shop, we are a centre here that produces meat, wool, forestry, and has significant tourism. Waitomo Caves are in our area. So these are really unsettling times.
Brent Nielsen from Waikato Age Concern says the drop in opening hours could lead to an increase in elder abuse. He says that's because more older people unable to travel out of town to do their banking might end up handing over their EFTPOS cards and PINs to others to do their banking for them.
There is the potential that they are going to rely more on others. Many of those people are trustworthy, sometimes they are not. Unfortunately, that's an area of considerable financial abuse through lack of mobility and lack of accessibility to banking services.
Mr Nielsen says for older people, the trip to the bank is a crucial way to stay active and connected with the wider community.
What ANZ and Tikawiti are doing are limiting the days that older people are more likely to go out and do their banking and have the rest of that social connection. And people who are socially connected are less vulnerable.
Deb Hill from Otorohanga Support House, a hub for social services in the area, says it will make life much more difficult for the most vulnerable people in the community, many who don't have access to the internet or smartphones. She says this could have cascading negative effects.
If somebody with their power account can't pay their power on time, then end up with having a disconnection of their power, and then they get a bad credit rating, and then they can't go anywhere else for their power because they've got a bad credit rating, or because of the lack of hours of a bank in town.
ANZ says the average customer only visits a branch once or twice a year, with the overwhelming majority of banking now done online. Mayor John Robertson says he wants ANZ to help people get up to speed with online banking technology.
Perhaps with workshops on internet banking, working with some of our community agencies like CAB to help those that are not familiar or uncomfortable with this new way of paying.
ANZ says its staff can help people register for its digital services, and people can call its 0800 number for banking assistance. It says now only 1% of transactions are done in person, compared to 43% in 2012. For Checkpoint, ko Hamish Cardwell-Aho.
The White Ferns will tour the country and play for more prize money at next year's ICC Women's Cricket World Cup. All 6 of New Zealand's host cities will get to see the White Ferns in action as the 31-match schedule was confirmed today. Felicity Reid reports.
Oh, that's going to be the game. In one mighty blow from Sophie Devine, it's been a brilliant innings.
White Ferns captain Sophie Devine has starred on cricket's biggest stage, but now the World Cup is coming home to her backyard. The dual international can't wait for the Trans-Tasman battle against Australia on February 13 at her home ground, the Basin Reserve, but says the tournament is about showcasing the talent to all of New Zealand.
It's really important for us to get across New Zealand and to get in front of as many New Zealanders as possible and to put our product out there. And it's not just us New Zealanders, it's the whole world. I think the exciting thing is I know the standard of women's cricket because I've been playing it for close to 15 years, but I want to show the rest of the world, not just New Zealand, but everyone else in the country, how great the women's game is at the moment and how close the game is getting.
New Zealand Cricket President Debbie Hockley played in a total of 5 World Cups and retired after winning New Zealand's only title in Lincoln 20 years ago. There's good signs for the popularity of the women's game, with over 86,000 turning up in Melbourne for Sunday's T20 World Cup final. Hockley says success next year will be measured by more than what's on the scorecard.
I think it'd be a terrific success if New Zealand managed to win it. That would be fabulous for a start. Terrific attendances and viewership of the matches and leaving a legacy after of young girls and young boys who want to take up cricket and to stay in the game.
The White Ferns will have the backing of the government as Sport Minister Grant Robertson says the women will get more financial support than normal to chase the silverware.
In the funding that Sport New Zealand has given, which has in the past gone to the Black Caps for the last few years, that's transferred over now to the White Ferns for the build-up to this campaign. And obviously there is the major events funding, which is about supporting putting the tournament on as a whole. But we certainly want to give the White Ferns every single bit of support we can to have them be competitive in this tournament.
Robertson says the tournament will be a platform to promote women's sport in New Zealand.
We've still got a long way to go in sport for true equality and equity, but having events like this, having the International Cricket Council stamp on an event like this, means that we can take that another step forward. So I think, it's incredibly good for the game and incredibly good for women's sport.
International Cricket Council CEO Manu Shawnee says other sports should follow cricket's lead when it comes to females in the game.
As cricket, we want to lead the women's sport and make a difference and show to people that we can create a structure which has fans going for it, which basically inspires young children and young women. And it also is basically something that gets followed up by the sponsors and the other stakeholders.
Shawnee says prize money is only part of the plan to close the divide between the men's and women's game. But next year, the world's top female cricketers will compete for more prize money than ever before. In 2021, a total of $5.5 million is on the line, which compares to $3.1 million in 2017 and $316,000 in 2013. The final will be played at Christchurch's Hagley Oval on March 7.
Curls on, there's a big shout, and it's been given.
For Checkpoint, Felicity Reid.
And almost a year on from the Christchurch terror attacks, a high school in South Auckland has a special gift for the city's Muslim community staff and students at James Cook High School in Manurewa. Welcomed representatives from both Alnor and Lydwin Bosques to receive a heartfelt waiata. Amy Williams and video journalist Dan Cook was there.
Roimata Maitarangi, tears from the sky fell as the school's 1,200 students gathered to welcome guests from Christchurch today. The rain didn't dampen the spirit of the occasion and it soon cleared. James Cook High School Principal Grant McMillan says the waiata is a powerful message of shared grief and hope.
Just about everybody has a song that means something to them, a song they go back to when things are tough or when they want to remember something. And this is one of those anchor points. It's one of those po that stands there in the time. And it also reminds the students who know it and will go back to it again what the future could and should be.
He says the waiata expresses how the school community felt in the wake of the terror attacks.
March the 15th affected our school in all sorts of ways, from small things like the Māori Stage of Polyfest, something's been cancelled, all the way through to the Muslim students and staff in our school being affected hugely. And in the few days that followed, our staff here and students captured that mood, and one of our teachers actually composed the waiata or song.
Him and